very easy to spend money on the wrong cycling products. But luckily for you, myself and Jack have made some absolute clangers of purchases in the past. So we're going to run through some of our worst purchases so that you don't have to make the same mistakes as us. Jack, you've wasted your money on a lot of things, and being Scottish, I'm sure that hurts you deep down.
It does hurt me. I am truly living the stereotype life, yes.
What's your first clanger?
Okay, my first clanger, number one, does relate quite specifically to me and my cycling, but TPU tubes in general. And if I want to throw shade on any specific one, the Schwalbe Aerothan.
Why?
TPU tubes have their place, for sure. Was it thermopolyurethane, thermoplastic, whatever it is. TPU tubes, as they're known. They offer reduced rolling resistance and lower weight compared to butyl tubes, and some claims around increased puncture protection. In my experience, they don't necessarily live up to that. And I think some of the compromises aren't quite worth it.
So interestingly, we had Dan Bigham on the podcast the other day.
Oh, yeah. He knows a lot. I hope he's not about to disagree with me, because he's a clever guy.
He agrees with you. He was talking about pro tech trends, and we had a section on how we as mere mortals could actually improve our bikes at home, and he actually said that TPU tubes in some cases are not all they're kind of advertised to be in terms of rolling resistance.
Okay, interesting. I'll give you a context to why I came to this conclusion. First, when the Aerothan originally launched, like everyone, wrote the story, we had a bunch of them kicking around the office, and I chucked them in just in a saddlebag that I took around for ages, and I got a puncture out with the BikeRadar gang, funnily enough, coming through a place called Yatton, clanged into a drain that was exposed, wrecked my rim, which was stressful enough, and I thought, well, I'll give the Aerothan tube a go. And Schwalbe Aerothan valves are carbon. They're like carbon plasticky composite, which I didn't know, because when I was pumping quite vigorously and stressed out the side of the road like this, I snapped the valve clean in half. And I've had it happen to me subsequently on another one of their valves. And also, because of the this is a really niche problem, but I was running the look for them a little while on a tandem, because it's what I had, and I used the little pressure sensors that screw into the valves, and the valves misshaped, like deformed, so I can no longer even put just like a regular core.
Oh, great.
But for me, like apart from the plastic cores, or rather stems on the Aerothan, like I then subsequently was won over by the what are they called again? Tubolito.
Oh yeah.
Tubolito make really heavy TPU tubes. So they're specifically designed not for low rolling resistance, but increased puncture protection. And for our tandem and sort of gravelly touring bikes, I thought they made a lot of sense, where you'd maybe get some of the advantages of the lower rolling resistance and increased puncture protection versus a butyl tube, but they haven't lived up to the hype. And when they have punctured, they're very, very difficult to fix. I can see why someone may invest in them for a road bike, but I think if you're going that far these days, it's quite unlikely you own clincher-only wheels. I would just go tubeless.
Yeah, I've actually done the same thing as you. When they initially came onto the scene, I had one, I'd slung it in my saddlebag, and I think I've got a saddlebag kicking around with one still in. And if my Allen key set hasn't worn through it, I will be amazed.
Yeah, I just... They have a lot of promise, and I can see why. But I think if you're really interested in chasing lower rolling resistance on a road bike or a gravel bike, and you don't want to go tubeless for whatever reason, I'll just go latex, personally. Like the latex tubes I've used in the past are good. And TPU, I've just had no end of horrors with them.
Well, my first one, and I really want to not throw shade at the entire brand, and I want to make this plain that this is quite an old bike, like a 2013 bike or something like that. Quite specifically, the Felt AR4.
I'm not familiar with this bike, so you're going to have to paint me a mental picture, because I don't have the benefit of the viewers seeing the wonderful assets right now.
It was a kind of aero bike when they were coming into existence, but the problems were plenty, and the watt savings were few. got quite biblical there.
It was lovely.
But yeah, it was a former triathlon bike, which was the first issue. I went to pick it up, and then in trying to clean it up for my use, I found that an entire ocean's worth of salt was inside.
It was a triathlon bike. You should have anticipated this. The triathletes love to wee and dribble all over their bikes. So.
And it had basically been dunked in the ocean. So that was the first problem. It didn't really work for about a month before I could clear it of everything. The cable routing was a joke. It's one of those ones where it went up off the bar and then into the frame via the top of the top tube.
Oh, like
just
the old
behind the stem.
3T ones, like the Explorer used that for a while. And what was the other one that did? One of the Cervelos did for a while as well. I know, I'm familiar.
Whoever came up with that, fine. You can do that if you've got like hydraulic disc brakes and electronic shifting. If you really want to. For mechanical shifting, it was horrific.
What kind of brakes are we talking? Just regular centre calipers?
Regular rim brakes.
Okay. That's less hateful than some aero bikes at the time with their little funny mini V brakes.
For sure, and it had a threaded bottom bracket, so it was all right. But like I say, I didn't actually find it that fast. It was very uncomfortable because it was the kind of early-ish days of aero bikes, and they were just...
A wedge.
Yeah, they were stiff in the wrong places, and then like a wet noodle in all the places that you don't want that.
Do you have any wonderful pictures of this bike from when you built it up? Was it with drop bars or a TT bike?
It was drop bar. It was meant to serve as a racing bike, and I think I only did a season of racing on it before I flogged it.
I don't know if this is necessarily an upgrade or whether just it was an ill-advised, at the time I assume, eBay purchase, Liam. I'll be honest, I think you've fallen foul of your magpie-like needs to buy new bikes.
It will be a theme running through today that I've made some very bad decisions late at night on eBay.
Upgrades or ill-advised purchases, we'll see, okay.
Just all of the above. Jack, what is your second?
Number 2. So a little earlier this year, I built up a very handsome giant TCR, which I love very, very much. And I wanted to make it just look that little bit more pro. I also got a little bit anxious because I'd quite often ride with Felix Smith, our colleague, who would always drop his chain on the inside of his chainstay. And I see these horrendous gouges he was munching through the chainstay. And I thought, I don't really want to do that on my nice new carbon bike. So I was too tight to buy a K-edge chain catcher, even though they're only like, I'm very Scottish, they're only, 25 quid, something like that. And I bought one from AliExpress. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't cost me like £3. But I thought, it's a piece of aluminium, like how bad can it be? I wasted, I'm not exaggerating, about 2 hours trying to get this thing to work. But it simply didn't at all. It didn't have any of the set screws that are required to like move it where it needs to be, but also to hold it in place. It merely relied on the sort of like, if you imagine a mount on a typical front derailleur, where the bolt went in, just the tension from that. So obviously when the chain would go onto it, there was no serrated washer, there was no set screws, nothing like that. It would just push in. It was a total hassle because I went through the rigmarole of taking it apart, putting it back together, then taking it apart and putting it back together. And I was very cross with myself because it's one of those examples of like, K-Edge are the company who make chain catchers. Like they are the ones that everybody uses in the Pro Peloton. I was like, well, I'm going to do better than them. Just buy one on AliExpress. Waste of time. And life is too precious to not spend £25 to £40 on a chain catcher if that's really, really what you want. A word of warning.
I've got 2 observations right now. One, have you not considered 3D printing one like Ineos do?
I unfortunately don't have access to a 3D printer nor the means to design one, but thank you for the suggestion.
That sounds like Christmas sorted for you.
That would be good.
We'll have a whip round in the office. 2, and just because Felix is behind the camera here, a suggestion to you both. Have you considered learning how to shift?
I can shift, and I don't drop my I don't drop my chain on the inside ever because I can set up a front derailleur. I'm very good at it because I had to take it on and off twice for this stupid chain catcher. But nonetheless, I think it's a good example of where it's sometimes worth spending a little bit more money for a proven product.
Yeah.
I've got lots of good stuff off AliExpress in the past, like tools and small electronics and that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with a lot of what comes off of there, but like, yeah, I just need to not be as tight. How about you, Liam? What's your next terrible... Oh, actually, this is kind of related. I can see, looking at the notes, related to our previous talking point. I'm looking forward to bickering with you about this.
This is going to cause a fist fight, and I'm rolling up my sleeves, and I'm very...
tossing my hair.
Yeah, I'm glad there's a sturdy plant separating us. Oval chain rings, especially kind of fake ones that you get off eBay.
Why?
Back in the day. They don't work in any regard. They're a nightmare to set up. They ruin your shifting. and they do not make you any faster. And I was sold a lie. I was like, I'm going to be Chris Froome, because Chris Froome was popular back then.
Have you considered ignoring all that and just accepting the fact they look really cool?
But they don't. Your chain spends all the time going up and down.
I have oval chain rings on my TCR, and I like them very, very much. I ended up with them just sort of, again, a bit like the AR4 tubes. We just had them in the office, and I was like, I'll give them a go. And I've stuck with them ever since. I don't necessarily feel like they make me any better or any faster, but do they do any harm? No.
Yes.
No, they don't. Have you considered, Liam, learning how to shift? I think they're fine.
No, I want to mash my DI2 button at 500 watts and just have it work.
So what ones did you specifically use? You referenced off-brand potentially.
Oh, that's a question. So Doval springs to mind. Doval. And if I can find an image of this online, beer? I will be amazed. No, that's Duval. And I really want one now, you've said.
Doval?
We should do this. There's a Belgian beer place literally outside the office.
Duval is right. I've never heard of this brand. How unusual.
There you go. They also didn't come with any of the washers that you needed to fit them to your cranks. So I had to dig around my dad's parts bin for washers, and obviously he didn't have one small enough, so I then had to machine down a load of washers to make them fit. It was a nightmare.
This sounds like a bit of a you problem. I'm team rotor on this. I think they look cool. I don't think physiologically they make any difference on a road bike. On a gravel or mountain bike, I think they're good at very low cadences. I think we talked about this in the past. But you do need to get past the fact that they're a bit complicated with power and so on. And I will admit they require a little bit more fussing with the front derailleur. But they look cool.
I'm sure if you buy Roval or Osymetric or any other kind of recognised brand out there, they probably are fine. But the ones that I bought were horrific.
I've got a quick question for the audience. I spoke with Rotor a little while ago at Eurobike, and they were telling me about topics they'd published in their newsletters and stuff. And they said that their most popular piece they'd ever done was about how oval chain rings affect power meter accuracy. And I kind of looked into it, because we use things like search data. There's quite a lot of interest in oval chain rings. So let us know if you want any...
Should we bring them back?
Yeah, let's bring them back. Let us know if you want any videos or concepts on oval chain rings. We might look into them.
The oval chain rings were on the Felt AR4. I really hated that whole bike. I had a set of wheels that I got from...
Oval wheels?
No, from the Far East, and they were fine. But I put, Lightweight have those lovely decals. Yeah. I ordered a set of stick-on decals, but they were massive. They're absolutely massive. So my friends ripped me for them. But also, then I put a 34-tooth chainring on to go to the Alps. And the chainring was worn, but I didn't know that. And so my chain kept slipping on out of the saddle efforts. And I thought it was the wheels, because obviously, bought them from abroad. And there we go.
Liam.
What a moron I was.
Do you want to hear my next one?
Yes.
Bad overshoes. Cheap overshoes.
Yeah.
I like overshoes are, in my view, best considered as disposable. Really, no set of overshoes I've ever had has lasted especially long. However, I have in the past cheaped out. And I can't think of really specific examples other than a set of Planet X ones. I bought in this big winter cycling kit package. And I'm not exaggerating, they lasted 2 rides.
Yeah.
Absolutely appalling. The only ones I've ever had that have lasted especially long are a set of Shimano S-Fire ones I'm currently using. They're quite good. And I really liked the Grip Grab knitted ones. I know people have had quite mixed experience with them. They kind of catch quite quickly. But they did last a few seasons until I trashed them. Walking, doing a bike over a hill, my fault. But also their neoprene ones. They are probably 50 to 80 pounds, I would say, for theirs. But a good sturdy set of neoprene overshoes is well worth the investment, because flimsier, lighter ones just simply do not last. Now, some people swear by winter boots. I had a set of physique ones. I had a set of physique ones for one winter, and I wanted to buy into the hype. I really didn't get on with them. The ergonomics were quite compromised. They were very flexible, and they were so hard to get on and off.
Yeah.
Compared to even overshoes, they were an absolute chore to get on and off.
I don't like them because all the rain just drips down into your shoes. And I'd rather... So the things that I swear by, one, I had a set of Altura Overshoes for... Might still have them, actually, for at least 7 years. And they did all my cyclocross pre-rides.
I was going to say you raced in Overshoes.
I wouldn't commit that cardinal sin. But yeah, they held up so well. And also spats.
I've never used spats. I'd be quite intrigued by them. I just don't like the Tron-like graphics.
Well, you don't have to have that anymore because they've brought them a bit more up to date. But they now do like regular-ish kind of length ones, so you don't have to have the knee-sized ones. They last. If you want a set of Overshoes to last, honestly, they're built like these Doc Martens. They are fantastic.
Interesting. Yeah, I have seen that. I was put off by spats originally because they had a sort of like weird metallic design that looked like the cover of a game where you'd be hunting aliens in a nuclear bunker or something.
Yeah, I always thought they looked like you were going to wear them to go on and do the bins or something like that.
Exactly. But yeah, long story short, do not waste time with cheap overshoes. If you like winter riding, cold feet are rubbish.
Yep.
So buy some good overshoes. And my recommendations would be grip grab ones, knitted, or the neoprene ones if you like, your Altura mystery ones, or spats.
Altura, if you spend 15 quid at Altura, this was the case back in the day, you'd get something good.
Okay.
Maybe it's not anymore, but I'm not sure.
Spats it is.
Spats. My next one is a fantastic one, and I'll start my story in the gym. I was in the gym, small. Absolutely getting massive, and between sets of 3 million kilograms, whatever I was doing, I was on Facebook Marketplace and I came across a TT bike. And I bought said TT bike, knowing full well that it was a fake, which I don't exactly condone, but I thought I'd take a chance.
You neither condone nor condemn?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't do it, but I did it. And then the next day, I fell off my bike and broke my back. So the bike arrived as I was like tossering around the house going, I can't bend, I can't twist. And I looked at it for a few months, restored it a little bit, made it work. The brakes were a nightmare. Everything about it was a nightmare. I used it once, got such bad hip pain because I wasn't used to the experience, and then decided that I didn't actually like time trialing because it all happens on like A roads and horrific places.
Are these mistaken upgrades, or is this again just you with a bad sense of a bargain on Facebook Marketplace?
This is me shouldn't be left alone with a mobile device with too much time on my hands.
Fair play.
Access to the internet is not good for me.
Was your back okay?
Yeah, it's fine now.
How did you do it?
I hit a pothole going down into Castlecombe, the little village. And it was such a chill ride. Me and my mate were just out on a nice summer's day. I hit a pothole, lost the handlebars, and then it would have been fine. Like, I've crashed a lot in races, and I think I can tuck and roll pretty well. But there was a raised bank on my left-hand side, and I went towards that. The front wheel pitched into it, and I didn't have time to tuck and roll, so I basically did a salmon dive onto my head and then bounced down the road.
Maybe the bike was cursed. Maybe that was the issue.
Well, that was the SL7 that I crashed on.
Maybe it was cursed.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear my next one?
Absolutely. Bring it.
Bad tools. I have wasted a lot of money in the past. Partly when I couldn't afford good tools. I'll kind of say that, if you're infrequently fixing stuff, clearly a cheap toolkit will be fine. And if you want to buy one, you can read the excellent guide on BikeRadar.com with the best toolkits. But I didn't. Mine was a bit more hodgepodge than that over the years. But things like cheap multi-tools and cheap cable cutters in particular have caused me more grief than they've ever solved over the years. I think there are some places where, if you are quite an infrequent mechanic, like a headset press, clearly a block of wood and dapping it and will be fine.
No, just take it to your local shop, please. Come on.
I'm very tight. But bad multi-tools have caused me a lot of issues in the past. Generally speaking, if they're undersized is a bigger issue, tend to round out heads of bolts and that kind of thing. But also, like, they just don't really last, especially if you're in a position where, like, the multi-tool you take on a ride is the same one you use at home, or if you don't have a set of hex keys at home. Corroding, bending, falling apart. Like, multi-tools are surprisingly variable in their quality, so I would always advocate that you buy, like, a good one for sure.
But not necessarily kind of a cycling branded one.
Yes.
The markup on those are ridiculous. Like, if you go to Vera on Amazon and just give them your money, you'll get fantastic tools that last so long.
I didn't do that, and I've trashed a few things in my time with that, or just hurt myself, slipping hex keys and smashing knuckles off bikes, that kind of thing.
Have you ever broken anything because of a bad tool? Because I have, and I can feel the pain, but I can't think of what it was, and I'm hoping it comes to me in the next few minutes.
As in, like, broken me or a bike?
Bike.
Yeah, I have. I've broken quite a few, like, chainring bolts, that kind of thing, rounded out with like a nice, more snugly fitting thing. Chainring bolts always tend to seize. I rounded out quite a few of them. I'm pretty sure I destroyed a main pivot on a derailleur once as well with something like that. Yes, cable cutters is another one though, where, like, you don't have to spend a great deal of money to get a good set, but if you do regularly replace your own cables, which you should, they tend to, like, really mash the housing. You don't end up with a nice clean cut. It's much harder to prepare the end of it where you put the ferrule on. Bad tools. Fine for some circumstances, but an absolute nightmare for others. If you have, like, pieced together a toolkit over the years, individual brands will be good at individual tools. The one I always think of is, like, Nipex, which apparently is not pronounced that way. It's something different to that.
I can't be bothered to learn, but I know that so I've got 2 sets of cable cutters, one for wire cable, which I don't use anymore because who has mechanical shifting?
But speaking to the people there, Liam.
I know. All of the test bikes I get are electronic, I promise. But brake hose cutters, they are fantastic.
Yes, that's actually a really good example where I didn't have a set of hose cutters. I did just use a set of, like, side cutters to do it. And weirdly, it was on, like, Magura hydraulic disc brakes. That's not disc brakes, sorry, rim brakes. That's a whole other kettle of fish. But, like, I ended up kind of not very flushly cutting the end. There was, like, a ridge. And like, if you're gonna, I'll go back and say cheap tools are bad, but they're even worse when, like, you don't necessarily know what you're doing.
Or if you use them for what they're not designed for.
Yes, quite.
Yeah.
Quite. So, just read our wonderful guides, buy the tools. Actually, no, that's what I was going to say, sorry. If you're piecing a toolkit together bit by bit, consider investing in places where it makes differences. So if you do need a set of cable cutters, well, probably buy a set of Nipex, whatever it is. If you need hex keys, Vera's a good option. Do a bit of research, but if you're just starting afresh, a really good solid toolkit with all the basic essentials, we've got you covered on BikeRadar.com.
Oh, and if you want screwdrivers for a bike, JIS, Japanese Industrial Standard.
Well, only if you're going to be using crosshead on Shimano old-style derailleurs. JIS is the only one, because Campo and other ones just use regular crossheads.
Do they?
Yeah. Oh. Maybe I hope I'm not wrong. Someone will tell me in the comments. But
you're going to get absolutely flamed in the comments.
Well deserved.
Right. What are we up to? 4th? I think 4th.
I don't know, a litany of errors has already been covered.
It was a job to whittle it down to this few, by the way. AliExpress action cameras.
Any specific models?
No, the ones that you could get in 2012 were particularly poor. And I had these small ones that me and my mates were going to the Alps and we were like, oh, we're going to make some sick edits of our descents.
And look where it got you.
You've never seen these edits, and I'm glad that videographer over there has never seen these either, because these were filmed on an action camera that was this big by this big, that we taped with actual electrical tape to the front of our vented helmets in the French Alps in summer. So we would ride up the hills with basically no ventilation over our heads.
Wet head, yes.
And then go down and get footage that was like buzzing all over the place.
We had quite an interesting period when I first started at BikeRadar, way back in 2016. GoPro was very much dominant then, but it was quite an interesting period where we used to cover a fair bit of action cameras, and there were some challengers in the market.
Do you remember the Garmin Verb?
Garmin Verb. There was the Sony one that was kind of like a weird mini DV, like quite long thing. But we did also try a lot of, like non-mainstream branded things because there was quite a lot of audience interested at the time. They were all terrible. They were all like universally terrible, and there was a reason why GoPro was so successful at the time. Now, obviously, in the like long term, like DJI and the likes of them have become really serious players, but certainly back then there was a very broad spectrum of quality. By which I mean GoPro was like all right, and then everything else was pretty dreadful. So I'm not surprised to hear that was your finding.
Yeah, it's amazing as well now because I take the DJIs out to get some footage of riding, and we can do piece to camera riding along with just their native mics, which is incredible. And the footage that you get is fantastic. And I look back on what I was getting from those early Alps trips, just absolutely shoddy.
I was going to say, there's a really funny video I did in 2018 with Ruben, when we went to, we did the Paris-Roubaix Sportive. It was amazing. It was like probably one of the best trips I've done. There's a really funny bit where we're going down the Arenberg. I remember watching it then in 2018. I was like, whoa, super wide. They were going so fast. It looks amazing. And now you look back and it is so bad. It is so incredible how far camera tech has moved on.
Yeah.
And how much better the cheaper stuff even is now.
Absolutely. Bring me your final suggestion.
Yes, this is another case of me being quite tight, actually. And worse still, not even just being tight for myself, but my partner. Laura, my partner, rides lots as well, but rides to and from work every day. And she'd had the same like Dior stuff on her bike for years and years and years, and then it was just worn out. And this is in the middle of COVID. That's my one thing I'll say in defence of me.
So you couldn't get anything?
I couldn't get anything. This was in the great bike shortage of 2020, let alone chains and cassettes. And I bought a set of off-brand. I can't remember the specific brand. I'll look through my Amazon purchase history in a minute. But it was basically like a generic, not Sunrace or anything like that, not like really generic chain and cassette. Which was also at the time when there was loads of Shimano counterfeit stuff going around, and everyone was like, oh, it's like not just bad, it's like kind of dangerous. And I went, nah, £10, 10 to 42 tooth cassette. Oh, it was so bad. The cassette like trashed immediately, completely crusted in rust. But the chains, like I didn't realise you could make a chain so bad.
Yeah.
Like this thing was made out as a 10-speed chain she has on her bike. And you know, like, you have a chain that will flop a little bit side to side. The slop in this pivots, it was like an eel wobbling around. And I know that people, particularly, like, not wrongly, look to the likes of Shimano and SRAM and Campagnolo, and they are very dominant in the cycling world, and people are looking to other brands. But generally speaking, the likes of, like, Wheeltop or... who else am I thinking of?
I don't know.
Other, like, Challenger. Microshift, for example.
Okay.
They don't really tend to make the parts that go alongside with the shifting bits. And I know a lot of people will be looking outside of SRAM and Shimano and so on for cassettes and chains. Do not. That is my sage advice to you there. Do not. Because the quality and the safety you get from a high quality chain shouldn't be overstated. It was quite unpleasant. I felt quite guilty riding behind Laura. She like pulled away from a set of lights, and for like the third time the chain just went like bang and snapped clean in half. It was a very, very poor choice. Don't skimp out on drivetrain parts.
Good lesson.
That's it. That's all I've got.
My final one is actually two combined.
Go on then.
So I want to say that every kind of cycling, and probably let's extend this to general fashion choice that I made until about 2018.
Can't wait to look at your Facebook later. Carry on.
Exactly. Particularly cycling fashion. These were simply crimes to everyone. I'm talking like BMC team shorts, you know, those red ones.
I do.
With a Garmin Transitions jersey. Oh yeah. Because, you know, blue and orange and red really work together with leopard Trek socks and black Bontrager shoes and that stupid helmet with the with the camera. I looked a picture on some
trips. True chopper.
Absolutely. I rode for some teams as well, like Psychology Sunwise, great local team, but we had a lot of sponsors and a lot of colours, and it never.
I think a
went
European
together.
hodgepodge, like mega sponsor kit could look good.
It can,
but maybe Wells's finest local companies didn't have the the sort of cachet of a flooring company in mid-Belgium.
Yes, absolutely. I want to tie this in with, as well, every single piece of winter kit that I actually bought while I was at uni.
Okay.
I didn't have a lot of money. I was on the Facebook marketplaces, the eBays.
I don't think Facebook Marketplace was around when you
No,
were at uni.
Definitely eBay.
Yeah.
Late at night, bidding £5 on XGB winter jackets. Do you remember the red and blue ones? I had one of them.
Did you?
It was horrific, and I had it paired with Sven Nice's old cyclocross team's bib tights. And that was, again, a lot of colours going on right there. Kept me warm, just about. That Adidas jacket, I think made by Nalini or something like that, caused all of the sweating, which was great on Dartmoor in the winter, because you battled into a headwind, got really, really sweaty, and then stopped at a cafe up near Princeton, or Princetown, whatever it is.
This is all Ford.
It's Princetown.
It's Prince at our local Devon. Cornish? Devon?
I can't believe you almost said he was from Devon there. Good Lord. Carry on, let's just skip past that.
That's fun. I've alienated a corner of the UK there. But yeah, I'd sweat, get frozen, and then have to ride home. And I just made so many bad clothing choices back then.
And something I've wanted to write for years. Maybe they'll let me do it as a video. They only wheel me out when they need me these days. I'm over the hill. But one of the things that's improved markedly in my time as a cyclist is kit in general.
Yeah.
And also it's got cheaper for better kit, if that makes sense. We very much mourn the loss of DHB, which set the standard for high quality, affordable kit. But I can sympathise entirely. The winter kit I rode in when I first got into cycling was terrible. Absolutely terrible. It's almost as if we never learned anything from the mountaineering world. We'd be like, I'm going to go out in near freezing conditions with no insulation.
At speed.
At speed, with just multiple layers of Lycra.
Yeah.
No insulating fabrics whatsoever.
My first pair of winter kind of leggings, tights, whatever, were waist ones.
Oh, yeah,
and they were
lovely tight tummy after a bowl of beans and toast.
And they were literally just Lycra. No brushed kind of Roubaix fabric, none of that. Literal just Lycra. And I wondered why I was cold. And we would wear, do you remember those Under Armour base layers?
Oh, yes.
I'd wear that and a jersey in the middle of winter and wonder why I was quite cold.
Cyclists of a certain age watching this will tell us that we're just wusses and they used to ride with nothing except newspaper wrapped around themselves.
I have done that at the top of Outdoors, actually.
That's a good flex.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't want to carry a gilet up the top because obviously I was trying to go for a time, and that's a lot of weight. And I got to the top and saw a storm roll in, and I was like, that circus poster, that looks warm.
How times change, but something that will never change, Liam, is our addiction to purchases we don't need to make on Facebook Marketplace.
Literally, I feel like a week doesn't go by that Jack is not kind of saying, oh, have you seen this TCR on Facebook Marketplace? And honestly, I've stopped coming round to see them.
I really, really want a new winter go fast road bike, and I'm kind of getting as much of a contact high of just looking as actually buying.
You should have bought my Kinesis when it was going.
You're quite little, and I'm quite tall.
It would have been aero. You'd have been fine.
We'll see. I don't want to buy any of your disasters based on what you've just said. Anyway, there you go. There's a long list of our catastrophic errors.
What do you want to do now? Do you want to go and look through Facebook Marketplace?
I think that's exactly what we're going to go do. We're going to go make some more ill-informed decisions.
Jack, thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I always enjoy listing off. It's therapeutic.
If you want to check out another of our vodcasts, one is appearing over my face right now.